So, what do I have got for you today? Well, you've probably seen the thumbnail already. It's a sling bag. And for this one, we got our two main pockets, and we also got a hidden side pocket that you can use as your main compartment. And in addition, you also get a flap pocket on your backside, which is quite neat for your phone. And as always, if you want to see how it's made, stay tuned.
So for the build today, I'm using 5-ounce pull-up wedge tan leather. And as always, after we've cut our pieces, we'll first want to get started to bevel and burnish all necessary pieces that we can already do. In this case, that would be all the pocket pieces and also on our front and back piece, the section where our zipper will go on later. And with that out of the way, to get started with the pockets, I'll first take care of our magnetic button. So I will be attaching this to the little flap that we have and then attach that to the closure for the smaller pocket. And while we're already there, I also take the other part of the magnetic button and add it to the circular piece, which will then go on the front pocket. And if you don't have magnetic buttons, you could also use a normal button, but I definitely prefer the magnetic buttons here because you don't really need force to open and close them, which is more convenient for these types of pockets. Then we can start gluing together the two pieces, and as always, bevel and burnish everything nicely, and then we can start sewing together the button to the flap. Then I'll continue with the rest of the smaller pocket. So I'll take my wing divider, mark our stitch line, and then we can punch both the front pocket and also the side piece that will then later connect it to the main body. But before we add the sides to the smaller pockets, I'll also glue the magnetic button on the cover here. And once that is dry, I also just punch and stitch that one in place. Then, once I secure the button in place, we can start to attach the side piece of the pocket. And I prefer to have the front pocket on top, so that at the side piece below, but technically you can do it both ways. I just think this one looks nicer. And then I start stitching all the way around it. And when doing this stitch, you also want to make sure you pull it tight on the corners so it wraps around nicely. And I'll skip the rest of the stitching here because I think you should get the gist of it. And then for the other pocket, we first want to prepare our zipper. So I just glue this up. And then attach the side piece again onto the zipper and then punch and stitch that one in place as well. But now before we go attaching our pockets, I also want to prepare the main body. And for that, we take the other zipper that we have and add it to the main body as indicated on the pattern. You can see here it's a little bit recessed, and I prefer it this way because it hides the zipper a little bit. And it also makes it sit more flush with the other pieces that you will see later on, so that your zipper also doesn't get stuck. And hand-sewn stitches always look better on the front side. So I take my wing divider again and mark the stitch line on the front of our leather, but make sure when you do this that it's actually still within the zipper, because that's the main part of this stitch, that we attach the zipper to the main body. But once that is done, we can stitch this one in place as well, and then we can continue to attach our pockets. already punched the holes for the smaller pocket and attached the side seam. Of course, we'll still need to do the same for the larger pocket. And similar to the other one, I just marked the stitch lines on both sides of the side piece, the front piece, and our main body, so we can sew everything together. Only minor difference is for this pocket, because it wraps all the way around, we also need to punch the short sides of our side piece. And then when we sew these pieces together, we want to make sure we start in the middle of the bottom so that we can hide the seam later on. And I just mark this with my ruler, but I will also mark the correct position in the pattern as well. And then from there, we start wrapping around the piece and sewing it all the way until the end. And then the sewing holes should line up perfectly so that once you've wrapped around, you can also go on and stitch the two ends of the side piece together as well. And now things finally can start to take shape. So we want to attach our large pocket, our small pocket, and also the closure for the small pocket all onto the main body. So similar to before, we just take some sewing thread and go all the way around for all of these pockets. And for the larger pocket, you also want to use the stitching hole where the two ends of the side piece overlap, and use that as your first stitch on the middle of the bottom. And from there, you can just start wrapping around all the way across. And now, before we go and put the front and back piece together, we also want to prepare the pocket on the back piece. So I just punch a small hole for our button, add some glue, and then we can put this one on the back piece. And once the glue is dry, as always, we also want to punch and sew this one together. And if you prefer, you can already add the button beforehand. But for this one, because I was doing this as the prototyping for this pattern, I added a little bit later, but honestly, it works both ways. And of course, we also need some way to actually carry our bag, so we should be doing some attachment for our shoulder strap as well. And for that, I just take the rectangular pieces, insert our D-rings, sliders, whichever one you prefer, glue them together. And we also take a small support piece that will go on top of the zipper, which I'll show you in a second. Then we can glue all these pieces up, also spread around the glue on the back piece already. And then put the shoulder straps in place. So we want one to go on top in the center and one on the bottom directly at the end of the zipper. And because we also want to give our zipper slider a bit of breathing space, I also add this small support piece on the top. So I just place it directly on top of the zipper, and I cut off a little bit of one end so it doesn't get away in the way of the shoulder strap. And then once we place that, we can just put the shoulder strap right next to it, and then we can start combining our front and back piece. So now before I add the bottom shoulder strap part, I want to connect both of our zipper pieces. So So I'll take the end pieces of our zipper, attach them on the top, and then we can insert our zipper slider and then also put on the other end piece on the bottom. And now that is in place, we can also add the other shoulder strap part directly at the bottom of our zipper. And this way, because the leather is thick enough and on both ends it's supported, our zipper doesn't get squished as easily and it actually has some space so it operates smoothly and it also doesn't get damaged in the future. Now for the small support piece that we added on the top, it sticks out a little bit, so you just want to take your knife and cut off any excess. And with that out of the way, we can actually start sewing everything shut. First glue it shut, and then we can start punching and sewing it together. Now we're already moving towards the finish line. So we just sew everything up. That also forms our main pocket then. And only part missing then is to add another shoulder strap. And for this one I use a fabric strap, but of course you can also do a leather one. You can also check out some of my other videos and tutorials where I go into a little bit more in depth on how to make the shoulder strap either out of leather or fabric. But for this one I just put in one end, glue it together, and then of course you also want to sew this at the end. And then for the other side, similar, I just put it through a slider so that we can also adjust the length of the strap and then glue it shut, sew all of them together, and we're good to go. So I hope you also want to give this pattern a try for yourself. So check out my Etsy store if you want to see the details. And if you liked the video, also consider subscribing to see more of my patterns in the future. And with that, I will say, see you next time.